Hey everyone, my name is Steve. I'm an sorry at Group Timescale. Group Timescale has uh, been working on the sales project for a while now, and we finished phase four, which means that we finished what we've been calling phase set A, meaning from phase one to phase four. And I wanted to do a little retrospective and demo on what we've done so far, what we've learned doing all this, and what will be our next steps going forward. So I wanted to share a bit my screen. Before I go through each phase, I wanted to run through the demo. So here I'm on GitLab.com signed out, and we have some service provisions, right? So the first thing is right now, the login for self is hidden by a special cookie. I won't go into too much detail, but I update my GitLab session with a specific prefix and I'm routed to a different login page. This is purely because everything is hidden for the user right now and everything is still in development. We'll fix the auth page at a later stage, but I'm gonna log into a specific user that only belongs to cell 2 right now, because the data is completely separate and this will show it. So if I sign in, I can see that I'm logged in under the github.com domain, but to show the data separation, I will try to go to GitLab org GitLab and I will see a 404 page. And even if I try to go to GitLab org, which is a public group, I'll see a 404 page because it is not present in this cell, right? So right now we have complete data separation. So even the IDs are completely different, separated and things like that. So I wanted to show, so let's try and create a project. This is showing everything, basically the routing, that, hey, everything is working. So let's create a project from a template and let's use the Ruby on Rails template. And let me zoom in for a second, sorry. Let's go create a new Ruby on Rails project called test. So it could be anything. And this kind of will show that, hey, we have Sidekick working, we have Gitly working. So this kind of exercise a bunch of stuff from our application when we create a new project, right? So we can see that we have the files and so on. So that's good. So what other things that we're supporting right now is CI/CD partially, and I'll explain what do we mean by partially. So let's go into CI/CD here and register a new runner. Um, so create project runner. I'll stop sharing my screen so I don't expose any tokens. So you'll have to look at my face for a second until I create it. And mhm. so so I have the runner token. Wait 1 second, one more time to uh, hide the page. Okay, so I have the runner token here. And right now it's not visible, right? Because I haven't registered it yet. So if I go into my terminal and I'm gonna register it, so I wanted to connect to GitLab.com. That name is fine. I'm just gonna use shell for simplicity reason. And then I'm gonna do GitLab runner run, that is connecting to GitLab.com. And if we refresh this page, we should see it that it connected to a minute ago. So GitLab runner as it is today can connect to a cell automatically thanks to the routing logic that we've implemented. So now if we go into pipelines and try and run a job um, for this repository, we see that it's picking up a job, it's executing it, um, uploading everything. The problem is with Git routing. Right now, we haven't added support for Git routing, and that's because we need to do routing by the pod. Right now, when we route to a specific cell, we don't route by pods, but we route by either the cookie, like we're seeing here, or by tokens, like GitLab Runner token and so on. Um, but we don't route by path, and that's something that we're going to work on in the coming future. So, how did we end up achieving all this? So, as I mentioned, this was from phase one to phase four. So, phase one was really bootstrapping the infrastructure. We wanted to use GitLab dedicated tooling. So we have the same tooling for all of our platforms, especially SaaS platforms. And um, we bootstrap whole dedicated tooling just for GitLab.com and started a new cluster with ring-based deployments, meaning that we'll start in the inner ring and then propagate the changes into the outer rings. Um, uh, this was a big learning curve for a bunch of people because this meant we have to onboard a bunch of SREs that are used to working on GitLab.com's infrastructure to dedicated tooling, which is good because it's a good set of tooling and it will help us gain efficiencies, but it did require us to onboard a bunch of SREs to brand new tooling that they're not familiar with. And then we had to introduce a new service. So you saw that I'm still under GitLab.com, but I'm getting routed to a set of new GitLab instance, right? What we call tenant and dedicated. And that is thanks to what a new service called HTTP router, basically. Um, and this is a router, a Cloudflare worker that sits at the edge and in front of every request that flows through GitLab.com. Um, we wanted it to be at the edge, so we get a few benefits. One, we don't get any latency hits. One of our goals actually was an SLO of P95 under 50 milliseconds, so we don't incur any latency hits when we deploy this router, right? Like we want the sales infrastructure or cells not to hinder the performance or to make the performance of GitLab.com worse. We want it to be better, right? So we had this tight SLO for 15 milliseconds. And when I looked at the data, we're sitting at around 30 milliseconds for P99. So we're beating the P95 pretty well. And it's serving all requests. So it's serving all 85 billion requests. But in phase two, what we wanted is just deploy this router without any logic in it. So just inject it in the request. One, to validate that Cloudflare workers work as expected, and two, to make the simplest change in production um, without breaking anything for our customers. This meant that we had to use a brand new platform, Cloudflare Workers, and make it GA for us and figuring it out. And one other cool thing that we achieved is the deployments. So from main to production is under 20 minutes. So as soon as an engineer on HTTP router merges something to the main branch, it's running in production within 20 minutes. So this gives a good feedback loop to our engineers that if things are working as expected for production. We added a bunch of gates. So for example, we do gradual rollouts. So if there are problems, we don't affect all of our customers at 100%. Later in phases, we added end-to-end tests. So before we send traffic to the new version of the HTTP router, we run some routing tests. So we make sure that the requests are routed to the correct place. And then only when those pass, it will start sending traffic to the new version. So that's the HTTP router on its own, just pass-through proxy, meaning sending everything to the existing GitLab.com. And then in phase three, what we added was the session routing. This is what you saw me doing, logging in, and this is how I can see my username here by the GitLab session. So when you log in, GitLab gives you a GitLab session cookie. And the way it works is right now we're giving it a specific prefix, so then it sends it to the correct cell. And the HTTP router doesn't care about the validity of the cookie or anything. It only cares about the pattern. The validity of the cookie is validated by the Rails application that we route the request to. So the HTTP router is as dumb as possible. Its responsibility is just to route request and not to validate anything. That's up to the Rails application. So we don't move any business logic or anything like that, or duplicate any business logic. But for us to move to route the request by session cookie, we had to introduce a new service called topology service. And this service is going to be responsible to know where everything is in every cell, meaning it needs to know, like, for example, it doesn't do it right now, but it needs to know that this HTTP router E2E user belongs to cell 2. But right now, it only knows about the session cookie prefixes, right? So it knows that a specific prefix belongs to a specific cell. This was a new service. We deployed it on Runway. Um, it Runway was really simple to deploy to, and we got multi-regional out of the box, which is pretty nice. So we get all the resiliency, especially since topology service is also going to be in the critical path of every request, and we'll be working on making it more resilient in the future as well, before we make it so it's in the request path for everything on GitLab.com, because topology service is only used right now when we want to send requests to a cell. And then phase 4 is building on top of phase 3. So this is token routing. So this is what you saw me doing with registering a runner, sending it requests to it, and things like that. So we had to update we didn't update all of the tokens, but we updated the tokens that we needed, like runner token, job token, private access token for API requests and things like that. So they are routable, and then HTTP router can route the request to the correct cell. And yeah, that's all that we've done from phase 1 to phase 4. There was a lot of groundwork to do just because we had to deploy, we had to create two new services, we had to understand how routing works, and we had to go through updating the tokens to a new structure with routable information. And there's some lessons learned there. Like, for example, right now we have 15, like around 10 tokens. And we're going to have to update all of them unless we figure out something else. That's pretty much it. And then a little retrospective lessons learned is we should focus on immediate phases and don't work on future phases. This is something that we've done in the past. We were working on from phase 1 to phase 4, but we were also looking at phase 5 and like phase 7 and 8 and so on. This was distracting for us, and we spread the team too thin, and we weren't getting anywhere. So we should only work on immediate phases, but keep future phases in mind, in the sense we know what they need, what needs to be done, or like have a good idea of what needs to be done there. But we shouldn't work on it, or like we should just keep them in mind. And then nothing is done unless it's in production. And what I mean here is In the beginning, when we started looking at cells, we were only doing things up to the JDK level, but then this wasn't working out because we weren't getting a good feedback loop. So we made sure that from phase one, we everything goes up to production. So that's why we're looking at GitLab.com here and things like that. So that's a good learning lesson because we did face issues, for example, in phase three, as soon as we reached production, because there was some technical debt around how the login page works and how redirects work for signed out users, which resulted into us having to remove all the technical debt. So HTTP router works as expected. Um, and then documentation is important. We have a lot of documentation, especially design documentation around HTTP route, around cells, sorry. Um, but one, it's hard to digest. So for new users to come in, it's hard for them to figure out what to read first. And two, some of it is outdated from the implementation. So we need to be more disciplined around, okay, we changed the implementation and the code, so let's go update the design document to make it reflect reality more. And that's something that we're constantly trying to work on. So looking forward, immediate steps are phase five and phase six. So phase five is around cluster awareness, uh, meaning, as you saw here, for example, this one has a job ID of 19125. That ID is 100% taken on GitLab.com, the one that we use on a daily basis. So there would be ID conflicts. So that's one of the thing about cluster awareness. We need to make sure that each cell has there's no conflicts or data corruptions between each cell. So that's something that we'll be working on. Um, and then phase six, which is the existing GitLab.com, will become a cell. Now it will not be a cell provisioned by the GitLab dedicated tooling like we're doing on new cells, but it will be a cell nonetheless, and it will be cluster aware, so there would be no collisions on future cells that we provision in that cluster. Um, what we need to improve, I think, in the future is development environment. Right now, we do have some guidance on using cells and instrumenter, but I think this is something that we can improve, especially when we have so many services that we have to deploy, like HTTP router, topology service, and so on. And documentation, as I mentioned, um, some of it is outdated and we need to improve it. So these are the thank yous: foundation, dedicated, and delivery and runway. Thank you so much for all the help around this. I'm pretty sure I forgot some other people, but that's it. Thank you so much.